Greetings from Snake Mountain Boat Works on Wednesday, June 20, 2024. 95 degrees outside, heat index of 105, but it's nice and cool in here, thank goodness. Today we want to update you on our 1964 17-foot Chris Craft Super Sport. And I can tell you, she will be deserving of her moniker by the time she leaves here. A true super sport. Today, Joe is going to take us through his procedure and the whys and wherefore of filling deck seams. Take it away, Joe.
Yeah, so on this side, I've already got it all paved in, but I'm going to move over to the other side and show you how I personally do it. I have received really good results doing it the way I do. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of practice. So you want to cut your tip very narrowly. You don't want a whole lot coming out because it's kind of like welding. You got to chase your bubble. So I start up here.
What are you using?
This is the Sika 191 LOT.
291.
Or 291.
And it's mahogany, right?
It is mahogany. The cleaning up, or what you use for cleanup on this, is the Interlux 333. That stuff, it's not harsh or anything like that on all of your varnish surfaces, which is important because if you use anything too abrasive, you're going to end up wearing through your varnish, which isn't good. So on long seams, I'll start from each end and work into the middle. And basically you want to make it so you're not getting any air in there, which that's why you kind of have to use quite a bit. Because a lot of the times you will get an air bubble and you got to poke it down and you end up having to fill another void. Once I got it in there, I dip my tool in 333 and I do the same thing. I start in at one end and I force it down as well as cleaning it up. This is one of the two passes that I do on this. Well, actually it can take up to multiple different passes, but this one gets the good majority of it off. And what I do is when I get a good gob, I'll actually just go and pave it into the next seam and it will get me started, so that way you're not wasting a lot of this product, because it is pretty pricey.
Now what's that yellow thing you've got in your hand?
This
It looks
right here,
homemade.
It is. This is one of our old plastic scrapers that we use for applying 5200. Over time they get weak and you can't really, it's harder to pave in 5200, where this stuff is really lightweight. It doesn't take a whole lot to get it cleaned up. And then believe it or not, on most seams they average from an 1/8 inch to 3/16 of an inch. This here is just over a 1/4 inch and it's rounded. It used to be square, but I rounded it and it has just a little bit of a bend in it, so that way you're not having to hold it straight up and down. So then I dip this handy tool in, start at one end, push down, and as I go, I straighten it up a little bit so that way it's concaving it. And you can see it kind of just pours over the sides where there's too much. And this is where you get a lot of it built up. This is when you have to do, multiple different passes. Depends on how deep the seam is. And you'll be able to tell if you got any air bubbles, because as you push down and scrape, you'll notice a little hump in it. And if you do, you can take your tool and poke down on it, get the air bubble out. And then most of the time you'll have to put more in it. But you can also apply it with this as well.
Now will you do this whole half deck before you start removing the tape?
Yeah, I'll do the whole half deck just because that way your tape overlaps each other. So if you peel one seam up, you're gonna have to end up putting more tape down to cover up the other half of the seam that you got to do on the next one.
And this Sikaflex isn't going to cure in
No, this stuff,
the hour or so it's going to take you to do this.
it can glaze over in about 4 hours. But, it shouldn't take anybody 4 hours to do this on a deck. I did that whole half in about an hour and a half. So it really isn't too bad. And then I just do one quick one so that way it's all going the same way. Then the important thing is when you're removing the tape, whichever way you do your long last streaking, that's the direction you want to peel your tape. If you go against it, it's going to peel up all of the Sikaflex, and it will actually bring it opposite direction. So always peel your tape the same direction on your last paving. Otherwise you will get a mess. But I'll have this whole half done in probably about another hour after I get that all cleared off, and the aft deck is already finished, minus 2 that were already filled in this morning.
Well then, thanks, Joe. Let's take a walk around and look at the rear deck. But before we do, we have a mid-trip stop to make. This Super Sport owners knew what it meant and knew what it means to have a truly stunning Super Sport rather than a vinyl adulterated nice boat, but not something truly special. So one of their decisions was to ask us to fabricate and install traditional mahogany ceilings. These will all be stained with Mike Mayer's post-war Chris Craft gel stain. They'll be sealed with Pettit Easy Wood Seal 218 and then varnished. In other words, they're going to be treated the same way as the rest of the boat. The result will be just a spectacular cockpit area and seating area. So Joe has fabricated a full set of ceilings for both port and starboard. These will all come off now. We will finish sanding them, and then we'll go through the process of staining, sealing, and varnishing before we reinstall them. Yes, it takes time. No, it's not cheap, but the result is worth mega times what the cost is. This boat is just going to be unbelievable on the water. And here, finally, we got to the aft deck. Joe's finished here. When it comes time to finish these seams, Joe will go through the same taping process and paint each seam using the Interlux boot top paint. We tried Interlux topside paint, arguing that if you can buy a gallon for about 3 times what it costs you to buy a half pint, why not buy a gallon? Well, I'll tell you what, folks, buy the half pint. It's a different paint. It's the paint you want for seams. It is brilliant, brilliant white. It's tough as nails. And I can say from experience, it's not that much fun to apply, but you get the results you want. So with that, Joe's up front, removing tape. And we'll be back to you again. She'll look quite different at that time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye for now from Snake Mountain Boat Works.